Go Vandals.
Oh my gosh.
Welcome back, Mighty Vandals, to Tubs of the Club, your University of Idaho affiliate on the Big Sky Podcast Network. I'm your host, Brian Marceau, joined today by, as always, holding it down in Moscow, Marten. I don't understand the brick wall, but hey, it's there. Marten, Good to see you. How's it going?
It's going good. It's another day, another show I'm on. And spring game is only 2 days away now from the day we're recording this.
It is, which for a fact, we're going to get to that in a little bit. But hey, Dallas is not with us. Hey, death in the family for Dallas. So hey, Duffer's Tavern says in the comment section, the shots we are about to pour are in honor of Dallas's father-in-law. Sorry to hear about the loss. B-tch, yes, sad for Dallas's family. Hammer will be back. But hey, if thoughts are with Dallas's family while they're not here. Hey, life happens, and that means Tubbs takes a backseat. But the show must go on, and the way the show goes on is we dug deep and found our second favorite current University of Idaho student. Rory was unavailable, but hey, Patty Frakes, he's our look. You've been all jokes aside, Patty, you've been our MVP during spring football. So glad to have you back. How's it going for you?
Yeah, doing well. We're just finishing up our final 2 weeks of spring semester here. So I've been taking it pretty easy. Most of the classes are kind of lightening up, just getting ready for finals. And so I've had plenty of time to get to a number of practices and stuff, even though they're very early in the morning. But yeah, I've had a lot of time to get down to practice. It's been fun to watch the football.
Well, that said, we're in Around the Bar, brought to us by Hughes River Expedition. And before we get to spring football, we do have a couple things that if you see the title right now live says quick topics, that's going to change to the stories that will never die, because we do have two two quick things to touch on in stories that will never die. Those two stories are volleyball and the football fight. So first, there is volleyball news. And if you're a hashtag Only Tubs Discord member, you got it. You already know what's happening. You already know what we've been told. You already know what's going down. We're choosing to not talk about it right now because Dallas can't be on for further elaboration. But if you want to be in the know on volleyball news, patreon.com/Tubs at the club. Cost $250. Lowest level to join is $250, less than a cup of coffee. Now, if you want to pay more than a cup of coffee, we will never stop you from doing that. There's no amount of money we say no to, but starts at just about $250 a month. So you want to know the volleyball news? Join. We'll probably talk about it next week, but we expect, and we've been told that at least players are going to be told something pretty dang soon. So the other story that will not, it's just not going to go away is the football fight back from February 10th. We already recorded an episode which covered pretty extensively what we've been told regarding the fight. And there hasn't been any big news that would change since what we talked about, at least the facts of what has been made public. Other than, according to Creme 2 now, 20 football players are being investigated. But we bring up the story today because published as a kind of Twitter exclusive on a Trebe Talks account. So Tim Reed is the University of Idaho student who was assaulted, and his family and their attorney, which is I believe the attorney is Tim Gresbeck, had a press conference today. Tim Gresbeck is the one who spoke. The Reed family sat beside Tim, and Tim Gresbeck, attorney, talked about some of the things we talked about on the show. Appears to have been retaliatory in nature. We do know police investigations taking place. The reason for holding the press conference was to show frustration at what Gresbeck interpreted as lack of action from the University of Idaho, lack of public accountability. And he called out pretty much everyone, called out Terry Golick, which, hey, we've done that too. So, hey, you join the club. Called out Scott Green, called out Jason Eck. That's something we have chosen not to do. But anyway, the basics were family wanting accountability, published some pictures of Tim Reed from the night when he was knocked unconscious from a sucker punch, and he also fell and hit his head. Which, by the way, is a big deal. Like, I'm not saying this obviously didn't happen to Tim. This is great news, but look, I have a dude who I went to high school with who died from the exact same thing happening. Hit the back of his head. Looks like Tim did not. So great news. But talked about, contextualized Tim's experience, citing, pretty extreme fear. Like Tim Gresbeck said that Tim Reed, for a while after the fight, after getting sucker punched, he slept with a knife on him out of, anxiety about what took place, and called out the university for lack of action. In response, Jody Walker, this was published on Trevin's Pixley's Twitter page as well, issued a statement, which actually I do find helpful. So I'm just going to read Jody Walker's statement, which is the university is aware of an off-campus after-hours incident at a private residence on February 10th that was reportedly violent in nature. We are disappointed violence seems to have been chosen, and our thoughts go out to Tim Reed and his family. This would fall into a criminal realm and the jurisdiction of the Moscow Police Department. Students believed to have been involved have been contacted and asked to participate in a university investigation related to potential violations of the Student Code of Conduct or any other policy violations. The university cannot force students to participate, but encourages anyone with information to contact the Office of Civil Rights and Investigations. We will continue to look into this incident and the information provided by those participating in the investigation. Anytime the safety of our students comes into question, we are deeply concerned and work to understand the facts and take action accordingly. We have faith in the Moscow Police Department to follow their processes of investigation, which is a long way of saying, hey, Tim Gresbeck brought up the number in his press conference at 40, 50, or 60. I just don't think anyone should be obsessed with that number, and just understand, hey, like the cited number of people was a big number. Don't obsess over the literal number, just the fact of it seemed pretty clear. Lots of players showed up. But with that, hey, that statement basically said, hey, university they're not going to say anything, but they're also saying this is now a police matter. It was an off-campus fight. So they need to see results of that before follow-up steps take place. So with all that being said, long time on the shelf, Patty. You're a student in Moscow right now. Hey, what's the vibe with students? How are students interpreting, what's been going on here?
Yeah, it's been kind of weird. Like, we kind of got word of it, just the rumors were floating around kind of before most of the news breaks happen, which is, pretty typical. And we just kind of got the general, similar to what the news report says, like football players showed up and they showed up in mass with weapons and someone got punched. It didn't get like any insane details, at least for me. I'm also not like the most in with the group person of all time, but it wasn't a ton different than the news reports just a few days earlier. And then the news reports came out. We heard a few more grumblings about it. But among at least the student population that I'm around a lot with like classes and stuff, it seems like it's kind of floated out of relevancy a little bit. But when you go to Twitter, it seems like a totally different thing. I don't know. I also am not, like I said, I'm not the most in with everyone kind of guy, but it hasn't been like a topic you hear every day. Like, hey, the volleyball situation that was something you heard of all the time. So, I mean, it's not that much different information wise from what the news reports have said, though.
So I'm going to jump in with Captain58 in the comments section after acknowledging Jason Mayer in the comments section saying dinner and a show. Captain58, university won't say anything. Fight continues to be a one-sided story, which is to say only one version of events has come forward. Really wish our comms team could get ahead of something one time. And I guess, so man, Captain, that kind of helps explain a little bit how I feel. So when we talked about this on Tubbs, and we were pretty angry about it when we brought this up, the big focal point we had was, hey, like the people of Weezer we talked to, people who are not soft individuals, people who are not, like the people I know from Weezer are absolutely not the type of people who look for reasons to be like offended or reasons to be upset. If you're starting to lose those people, that's a problem. If those people feel like there isn't reasonable outreach coming out, that's a problem. And that's why that money went away from their Summerfest event, which is done. That to me for a fact, hey, if the people of that town, the stakeholders, family members, people who actually organize the event for Idaho, if they're not feeling taken care of, that's a problem. And that's the university's problem. As far as the next step of accountability, I mean, look, I feel like there's probably some way the university's hands are tied a little bit. If this is truly a police investigation, look, that they need charges, like they need individuals charged, which that has not gone public anywhere, like actual names of people who theoretically would be charged. So at this point, like there's a little bit comms wise, I don't know what the university is supposed to do. I agree that the university not saying anything, it feels like it doesn't help. But at the same time, if the amount of people who showed up, who are alleged to have showed up did, and by the way, I've heard people relay recounts of players. They don't dispute the volume and that it's a large volume of people. And the stories that got to me did not dispute that it was retaliatory in nature, which is to say, if that's the background for your response, it actually might be smarter comms wise to not say anything, because if what you have to say doesn't help you, then just shut up. I trust Jason Eck right now to handle this in-house to the extent he's going to. I don't think any vandal has reason not to trust Jason Eck with pretty much anything at this point. And Jason Eck would not be the first coach in the history of football, history of basketball, history of any athletics, high school, pro, college, whatever, to have some disciplinary stuff that they handle quietly. And then if you're not a person who received the discipline, you have no reason to know what happened. So I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm saying I wouldn't be shocked at all if that's how a lot of this is ultimately handled, because if the number of people there was 20, but also like, hey, it was a single person referenced as throwing a punch, like we're not gonna have 20 people kicked off the team or something like that. So if I'm from Weezer, I completely understand the stance of the family. I completely understand using spring football as a time to have the press conference in the first place to try to keep eyes on it, because hey, there are eyes on Vandal football now that 4 weeks from now, it wouldn't get the same level of attention. So I understand doing that. But if the university's stance right now is this is a police matter until there's police information for us to go off, there's not a lot we can do. And if the university, like they said, can't force people into code of conduct investigations. Well, if a lot of people who maybe would be implicated in code of conduct investigations, if they don't have to say anything, it's hard to it's hard to do much. So I guess like my big takeaway is probably part of why there's the frustration about this. This is the result of volleyball taking 2 years. The reputation of the university with athletic stuff is, at least like negative athletic stories, is sclerotic inaction. And that's now on them to fix that. So Nick Weber in the comments section, Gresbeck strikes me as an ambulance chaser who's trying to take advantage of the situation. So Nick, I don't have close experience with Gresbeck because I'm not a lawyer. Prior to today, I had heard only positive stuff about Tim, but I think he is trying to take advantage of the situation right now as far as like attention. But as the attorney of those people, like, well, I don't know what else he's supposed to do. In short, hope this gets resolved. But hey, Patty, tell me if you agree or disagree. I don't. If this is a police matter at this point, I do trust the Moscow PD. As we all learned in the Brian Koberger thing, not that this is anywhere near of that level. It's not. But just bringing up the fact that we don't know what police have doesn't mean there isn't anything. So I don't know a better thing to do other than tell people, hey, like, be patient. If you're a stakeholder that like the Reed family, lawyering up and adding pressure, I don't know what else you're supposed to do there too. So I have nothing critical to say there. If that's my family, I'm probably trying to add pressure as well. But we got to wait at this point. You know, if police investigation has stuff like video, has stuff like actual evidence, it may just take time. Moscow Police Department also, this was posted by Tree, said they have some search warrants they're waiting to finish acting on before releasing any information. So long way of saying, hey, shitty story that is never die, that it just won't die, is still not dead. We'll have resolution at some point. Patty, anything you want to add?
Not really. I mean, I think we're at the point where we just got to wait and see what the police and the authorities say. I think that's kind of where we're at right now. And I don't know what else the university could say right now that would like help fix the situation, because I don't think there is really anything they can do until that information is out.
Yeah. Hey, Duffer's Tavern. I think Duffer's Tavern here, they put it the way that most people probably understand the situation, which is, here's what they hope. The person who threw the punch should get kicked off the team and charged. Hey, we don't have a name here yet, so it's hard to say who that is. Everyone else gets some sort of gets a 1-game suspension or something like that. Hey, like, you know, if it's found out who maybe was involved in the planning level, I don't know, have them have something bigger, and most people get punished in-house. But anyway, I don't know what else to do here. Hey, there's clearly a person who needs some sort of repercussion, but I think everyone wants resolution to this story, but we're gonna have to wait. With that said, now it's time to move on to talking about the linebackers. So, Patty, you've been our eyes in the practice field. So, look, we've run through previews for almost all position groups now. Linebackers to me is one of the more intriguing groups. There's 2 big names who are gone from last year: Trey Thomas, and he graduated. He was 1-year rental via transfer portal, and then X-Ray Alexander, true freshman here for 1 year. Probably the biggest gut punch that all of us experienced in the transfer portal. But there's a lot of experience coming back. Hey, Jacksonek played a lot of Mike last year, looked pretty good, especially for a freshman. Dylan Lane had moments last year where he looked pretty damn good too. Matthias Bertram is good. He's kind of all over the place where he's played strong safety. He's also played some linebacker as well. But hey, you're on the ground at practice, Patty. What are you seeing?
Yeah, so linebacker has definitely been the most interesting group defensively. Just overall, I think they're the least, like, the youngest group as a whole. And they're in that 4-2-5, 4-3 system, your linebackers are really important. Just out of the nature of the scheme, it becomes really important if you want an example of where, hey, bad linebackers or bad linebacker play really makes your defense struggle. Eastern the last 2 years. So, they're really interesting just because it's a group of young guys that they have a handful of like a little bit of experience, but not like seasoned vets necessarily. And there's been a lot of bodies moving in and out at every position except for one. The Mike linebacker spot has been a Jackson Eck mainstay. All the practices I've seen, he's been the one at Mike, and he's taken almost all the reps with the ones at Mike. Jackson has been one of the most impressive players all spring. He looks like he's taken a big time step forward to me. Just watching him move, I think we kind of saw some of that potential at the beginning and throughout the year last year. We saw him be a good tackler. We saw him be physical at the line of scrimmage and stuff like that, but he wasn't the most polished guy when it came to moving in space and coverage and picking up like flat routes out on the flat routes and stuff like that out of the backfield. That is where he has been the most impressive to me in practice. He is moving extremely well. He's playing sideline to sideline from that Mike position, making plays in the flat, making plays out in space that last year maybe we didn't see. And I think that just comes with being a year older, a little bit more anticipation when it comes to like kind of seeing things happen before it happens. And he's been doing that all spring. I think Jackson Eck is going to take a big time step developmentally this year. And I'm really excited to see where he goes. The other two linebacker spots have been like kind of wild cards. So just depending on the practice, we've had different people at all the different spots. I'll start with Sam linebacker. So Sam linebacker, that's the spot that Matthias Bertram played last year and then split time with Trey Thomas down the stretch. That's like that kind of your hybrid safety. So in spring, the two names that have been splitting time at that spot have been redshirt junior Isaiah King. He's wearing number 4, and then also redshirt senior Matthias Bertram. They've been kind of splitting time. I think Isaiah King seems to be really the one, but it's been a rotation. But I do think Isaiah King has had maybe just a few more reps at that position. And King's similar to Matthias. I just think he has a little bit higher of an upside. Matthias has been, like you said, like kind of a wild card where he's had his strange moments in coverage and stuff like that. And then when you go to the will linebacker spots, that one has been even crazier. We've had 3 guys get significant time with the ones. It's been a rotation. Every single practice I've been to, there's been a different guy taking reps with the ones there. And so the 3 guys that have been taking reps there with the ones has been redshirt freshman number 11. This is a Lake City kid, Zach Johnson. He's been taking reps with the ones at will for a little bit. And then we had Dylan Lane take some reps with the ones. He started the year last year playing that will linebacker spot with the ones. And then senior linebacker Sear Barnes, he's also been taking reps at will with the ones. He was the guy at the most recent practice I went to that took reps at the ones, but it's been a melting pot of different guys, different situations, and all over the place. So that's like a long-winded summary of what I've seen. We can get more in depth into certain things if you'd like, Brian, but that's kind of the personnel side of things that we've seen.
So I want to ask you about Zach Johnson because he's a guy who didn't see. Well, look, he's not X-Ray Alexander, so he wasn't a starter last year, but from when we talked before we turned the camera on and yesterday, you told me you'd been seeing some pretty dang good things out of Zach Johnson.
Yeah. So Zach Johnson, the first couple practices I went to, he was taking reps with the ones at the will linebacker. He had been making plays in the run game, but he kind of struggled a little bit in coverage. He just freshman mistakes. I mean, he's only technically still a true freshman. He'll be a redshirt freshman next year. And so they kind of were rotating him and Dylan Lane. But Zach Johnson, man, he is athletic and he is faster than you would expect for a guy that big. And then last few practices I've seen, he's been playing Mike with the twos. So that's, your middle linebacker playing in the middle of the field. And he is playing sideline to sideline, making plays. He snuffed out like a bubble screen the other day at practice that me and Martin were at last Friday, I believe it was, and just lit up a linebacker, or lit up a running back. And me and Martin were both like, "Oh, he's making plays with the athleticism, which is something that's really important with the way that this defense and Dan Jackson likes to use their linebackers. They like speedy guys that can go make plays in space. That's why everyone's so spread out in the linebackers rather than being really close to the line of scrimmage. So, he's shown flashes of brilliance, but he just hasn't quite been consistent on the coverage side of things. And I think that's the only reason he wouldn't necessarily start at the will linebacker spot right away. But an interesting note with Johnson, last year, he played a little bit of edge rusher and like pass rush downs. And we've seen that again in spring this year. So on 3rd and 10, third and 7 plus, he's been coming in as a primary edge rusher. And when you think of at some periods in practice, the team will split into 7-on-7. That's your DBs, your running backs, your wide receivers. They're playing basically scrimmaging on one half of the field, then your D lineman and O lineman go on the other half of the field and do one-on-one pass rush drills. Zach Johnson, instead of staying with the linebackers and doing that coverage stuff, he's going with the edge rushers and rushing the passer, getting reps against the offensive linemen. So he seems like he's going to be a guy flopping between the two different kind of D-line and linebacker rooms, and he's going to be versatile, and I think we're going to see him kind of all over the field next year.
So, okay, thank you for that update, because that, again, local guy and redshirt freshman. He's a guy a lot of people in Idaho have their eye on. Which, side note, another item I forgot to bring up in stories that will never die. This is a quick hitter. So recent news is recent change in NCAA protocols. Graduate transfers used to essentially be able to enter to transfer out whatever the heck they wanted. That's changed. So the grad transfers have to work within the portal window now too. So as of May 1st, whatever roster Idaho has is the Idaho roster. So know that the portal, hey, it always has waves of anxiety, people leaving, excitement, and people coming in. We're closing in on the portal being a non-issue heading into next year, which has nothing to do with Zach Johnson, everything to do with the team. So, hey, of the guys you brought up playing at least some time with the ones, who that you have not talked about do you see as being a guy who's, whether it's just responsibility, they're going to see the field more, or whether it's you think they're going to take a developmental step? Who's another guy that in the spring game you're probably going to have your eye on who will see time with the ones?
I think it has to be Sear Barnes. He's not necessarily like the flashiest name of all time, but he's an older, more experienced guy that hasn't gotten a lot of playing time the last few years. I guess he's only been in Idaho for a year, but he was a big recruit, kind of, and then he went to Dixie State in 2019. Then he took the COVID years completely off, went to junior college in 2022 for his sophomore year. So he was a freshman in 2019, and he's just a senior now. It's kind of a weird path that he went on. But he in his film he looked okay. He didn't look necessarily spectacular. But then this spring he's been making plays, and he's worked his way up the depth chart. Like, he was pretty clearly probably number 3 or maybe number 4 at that will linebacker spot last year, as he would have been a junior. Yes, Utah Tech guy, Duffer's Tavern. And he's been taking reps with the ones the last few days of practice and has really held his own. And I think the thing with him is he seems to be the more consistent backer at that linebacker spot of the 3 guys that have been rotating there. Dylan Lane, he's been, he's a very smart guy, and he's clearly a kind of a leader of that defense, but he's had his lapses in tackling. An example of that is the Eastern Washington game last year. And then you have Zach Johnson, who very athletic guy, but he has not been the best when it comes to coverage in practice so far. And I think Sergey Barnes, is that how you said it was, Martin?
Yeah, that is what it says on the roster on the GoVandals.com recording for names.
I mean, I don't know exactly how to say it. I'll just say Barnes because
You can say number 13 on defense.
number 13 on defense. He's been like I said, he's been the more consistent guy, and I think that's something that the linebacker spot needs because last year we had a lot of ups and downs. You had, Matthias Bertram, he'd make a big play and then have a blown coverage, or you have, Trey Thomas, he'd, go chase down some crazy play out on the flat and then have a dumb missed tackle and give up a big play. And so having a guy there that maybe is more consistent would be, a big step in terms of like what will actually help the defense be a really good unit in 2024. Another name that I'm really curious about because we haven't seen him play a ton on the actual field is Isaiah King at that Sam linebacker spot. So he hasn't really, I don't know if he's seen the field at all. Maybe he did in a couple years ago, but last year he really didn't. And he's looked the part this spring so far, and he's shown some big flashes. He had a very nice pick. I don't remember who was throwing the pick, but he had a very nice pick undercutting a route early in spring and has seemed to kind of hold that Sam linebacker spot as his for a while. But, Matthias has been worked in there too. I think if you can get a guy like Isaiah King to, really take that step developmentally and take that position, I think those two guys, Matthias Bertram and Isaiah King, can be a very nice tandem at that position, kind of depending on the fit of who's going to play there, and just having a little bit more depth there would be nice. But I think King and Barnes are going to be your two guys to really keep an eye on. I think Jackson has taken a massive step, but I think it's almost less interesting because we kind of expected him to take a step. I think the Sear Barnes and King are the two guys that maybe you wouldn't expect when you're just looking at the roster. That you should keep an eye on on Friday.
Yeah, in 2023, Jackson Eck was big paws on a puppy to a T. Mm-hmm. So no, 100% right. I don't think there's a single Vandal who at this point is not expecting Jackson Eck to have a significantly bigger role and expects to see Jackson Eck make plays because physically he was fine physically as a true freshman, which is to say, hey, like you brought up, he is not a guy who needed to develop body. He just needed to gain that experience to become, a more seasoned vet to be making more plays. So, Patty, thank you for that update. We have one other. That's pretty much hit all the position groups. There's not a ton to talk about with special teams. There's one dude. It's just, hey, it's spring football. Hey, Patty, I mean, you're in practice. Tell me if I'm wrong here. It's hard to have much of a gauge about what special teams play is going to be because, hey, first, special teams plays are where injury-wise, much more likely to take place, in any given game, special teams. So we're not exactly getting a ton of that type of play in practice. The kickers are kicking with no real pressure, precisely. And we're probably not annihilating our kick returners. So we're going to talk about Abe, like Tom Lakey says, we're going to talk about Abraham Williams in a second. Now, hey, Patty, earlier, he'd been getting Abraham Williams on the defensive side of the ball, defensive back. He had been getting mostly play with the twos, correct?
Yeah, for the most part, twos.
Okay. But hey, we'll get to kick return in a second. Before that, Martin's ready. We have to talk about something that, this is a story that I hope will never die, for us at least. Hughes River Expedition, man. Look, if you're the type of person who you want to go on non-inclusive week-long vacation, just don't look past your backyard. Hughes River Expeditions has been Vandal owned and operated since 1976, and they're ready to take you on the vacation of a lifetime. If you want to go on a trip, you want to go on the type of trip your family will never, ever forget. You're going to talk about this for years and years and years. The type of trips like, hey, down the middle fork of the Salmon, the main Salmon River of no return, or the Selway, or their special trips like the one to see the Perseid meteor shower. Get a hold of Colin. It's how you get to see pristine beaches, run amazing white water, and hike scenic trails, spot wildlife, all the kind of things. Look, you're never going to be able to do it better than going with Colin. So Hughes River Expedition, call them now to book 406-540-4450 or check them out at hughesriver.com. And now with that said, we do have one special teams player we absolutely for a fact have to talk about. Abraham Williams. As already referenced, we brought the dude up in when we talked earlier in the spring about defensive backs, and hey, he's with the twos. He was a solid contributor at Weber State. He can be a solid depth piece in Idaho as a defensive back. But Martin, if you're watching the show, you can see this. If you're listening, this won't matter. We have some clips of Abraham Williams. Right after this interception is up, we're going to see a kick return against Patty's beloved Eastern Eagles, house kick return. So why is Abraham Williams such a big pickup for Idaho in special teams? The dude's been incredible. He has 2 years worth of stats from playing at Weber State. At Idaho, he's going to be a senior. He didn't return kicks for Weber State until 2022, and then he also did in 2023. So his 2022 stats: 4 kick returns for a touchdown, 37.4 yard per return average. 2023. Teams figured out a little bit to not kick to Abraham Williams. He returned 24 kicks in 2022, only 18 in 2023. Still found pay dirt with a kick return for a touchdown, 100 yards, and averaged 29.7 yards per kick return last season. That's for a career at the FCS level, 34.1 yards per kick return. He's been a multi-time All Big Sky as a kick returner, all first team last year. And hey, keep in mind, we had Jermaine Jackson last year at Idaho. He was good. Yeah, this guy is better. He was a Hero Sports All-American last year as a kick returner as well. All Big Sky his first year too. I mean, honestly, hey, 4 kick returns for a touchdown is pretty damn good. 5 on his career. So if you're looking at the highlights, what you're seeing, the dude is fast. He's a little bit more of a straight. His return is a little bit more straight line than like we saw with JJ, where he would be a little bit more shifty left to right. But Abraham Williams has athleticism that made it shocking to me. He landed at Idaho, but I'm stoked as hell to have him here. So with that said, Patty, what do you want to add about Abraham Williams?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't gotten to see him take a ton of kick return reps being spring. It's practice. Like the most we've really seen is they did like a half field kick return drill that they weren't even going to practice. They weren't even going to the ground tackling. It was just like a simulated blocking thing. So we really haven't seen him do a ton. We've seen him accelerate after catching a ball, but that's really it. But I mean, he's been a guy with a track record that, he can take any kickoff return to the house, which is, I think it's pretty important, especially down the stretch. Just thinking of that playoff game, the Southern Illinois game, where the kick return for the touchdown by Jermaine Jackson was the kind of brought the team back from a pretty low place offensively and energy wise and stuff like that. Having a guy like Abraham Williams with that kind of a potential for big plays is huge. In the special teams game, that's probably where he's going to make the most impact for the team next year. From what I've seen on the other side of things, he hasn't taken a ton of reps high up the depth chart on defense necessarily, but he has the explosive ability to take things to the house, as I've seen firsthand as a Eastern fan a couple of times. So, he's about as explosive of an athlete as it gets when it comes to straight line speed in the Big Sky. And so it kind of sounded like we got a little lucky to get him here with some credit type things school-wise. Yeah,
which Patty's alluding to, according to Jason X which he said in an interview with Chris King, that the reason Abraham Williams came to Idaho is he was going to go to BYU, reunite with Jay Hill, but there was issues with credits transferring, so that makes him a Vandal. BYU's loss is Idaho's gain. So I guess what I do want to touch on is just a teeny bit, because we're talking about the guy defensively. I think of him as a depth piece similar to Matthias Bertram, in that if Matthias Bertram is not a 1, but he's a veteran guy who comes in who he takes meaningful snaps, but you're not relying on him as, a majority. He's not a starter. That is good news for your team depth wise. There is certainly some good Matthias Bertram can do, but there's reason he's not all Big Sky. As a defensive back, I've been told the same thing about Abraham Williams. Look, if he's a depth piece, that's great news. that you have a guy like that as a 2, that you have a guy like that to supplement. But it's also good news that you're not relying on him to be Marcus Harris, because that's not who he is as a defensive back. But hey, Tom Lakey in the comments saying, is it Abe or is the Weber kick return team? Well, like, hey, Tom, there's been back-to-back great kick returners at Weber State. Like, not going to disagree with that being meaningful in some sort of way. But look at the tape, man. Like you said, Tom, in the comment section later, guy has elite straight line speed. That's going to translate. So to me, hey, big takeaway is if you were at all concerned about the kicking game, don't be. Or the kick return game, don't be. And Patty, as you alluded to, look, the bigger questions we'll hit spring game take hopes in a second, but look, the same field, the same group that at the end of last season, offensive line was the biggest offensive question mark. That's still the case. But like, you can win defensive teams win in the Big Sky. Idaho in the second half of the season should have self-identified as the defensive team, which is say, hey, won games with defense and special teams. So the fact that we have another guy who can contribute to defense and special teams winning games for Idaho, huge deal. I don't have anything else to take away there. So Patty, with that said, we got a few minutes left. You're going to be in Moscow for the spring game, correct?
I don't think I will.
God.
Easterns is the exact same time on the exact same day. So that's unfortunate. I apologize, but I'm going to the Eastern spring game.
Okay, well, that's why you're our second favorite. So, hey, spring game is Friday, April 26th. It's going to be broadcast at 6 p.m. on ESPN2, on ESPN Plus. Good Lord, ESPN2, on ESPN Plus. So if you can make it, do it. I'm going to have to watch on ESPN Plus. My wife's 8 months along, so different responsibilities. So I'm going to be watching on ESPN Plus. But if you can make it, because I make the spring game as often as I can. It's fun. It's free. It's good to see more Vandals be excited about football. Typically, it's guys who are a little bit more hardcore who are going to be going to the spring game. So if you can go, get your ass there. If you can't, watch on ESPN Plus. That lateral move, ESPN Plus, has bailed me out quite a few times when I can't go to games. That was for you, Martin. So, Patty and Martin, we're going to loop you in on this. What is everyone's hope on the spring game? Well, hey, duh. We don't want injuries. Every team in the nation. What's their main?
At least our favorite student will be there at the game.
Yeah, Roy Mayer is going to be there, I'm going to miss it. So, yeah, devastating. But back to the point. Everyone hopes no injuries in spring game, and that's the number one takeaway. And obviously, there's fundraising that takes place around the spring game. We want fundraising to kick ass. With those points being said, Patty, what specifically are you hoping to see? Just start with a point. We'll get you another spin here too. If there's one single development you are hoping to see in the spring game, what is it?
Hopefully giving Jack Lane some time to make some plays down the field. It's going to be tough because I think this Vandal front's like really good, like one of the better in the country this year. But, you know, I'd like to see them giving him some time because I think that's one of those developmental steps that will separate this team from being similar to where it was last year and being really good, like elite Big Sky team, elite in the country type of team. So I think just general O-line play, I'd like to see them take a little bit of a developmental step just because, like, I think when it comes down to the playoffs, we're going to be playing fronts that are really good and they're going to be similar to what Idaho has on their defensive front. And so, you know, it's a pretty good simulation for this offensive line to get looks against this Vandal front, simulating kind of later season opponents. When you think of the playoffs, you think of Montana State, teams that thrive on getting to the quarterback. So just overall offensive line play.
Martin, if there's one takeaway, what are you hoping to see at the spring game?
For me, it's more offensive line cohesion. I'm not going to say the obvious stuff with like injuries or anything. I'm also interested to see some more of the, I don't want to say lower, like maybe low one of the depth chart. The wide receivers are more to kind of see how they play now that JJ and Hayden Hatton are gone. I know I forgot to mention it in my little video last week, but another one it's made some kind of cool nice plays is Crew Clark, the early enrollee signee. He originally signed with Weber State, but then didn't obviously go with them after deciding to come to the better school. Like, I'm kind of interested to see players like him, see how they kind of try and take the reps that are being voided by JJ and Hayden. Yeah, that's what I'm kind of interested to seeing.
Okay. So I guess I'll hit my offensive hope, and then we'll do another spin around defensive hopes. So offensively, hey, Jason Mayer in the comment section saying, I want to see tight end schemes, A. Williams offensive trickeration, Eli Cummins hitting the gaps. Well, look, hey, what Jason brought up is, I guess, what I'm thinking. And look, we know that the spring game, they're not going to empty every clip. They're not going to empty the clip during the spring game. Not how it works anywhere, not just Idaho. It works. This is how every place looks. And we know, as a friend of the show has said to me before, if your offense looks better than your defense in the spring game, you're in trouble come fall. So look, with that understood, I guess what I want to see a second time is when we saw Jack Lane against Idaho State, part of the promise I saw out of Jack Lane, at least what I interpreted at my idiot fan level, is I just felt that this looked like a guy who had better command of the offense as a whole and was gonna more effortlessly spread the ball around than Giovanni McCoy was able to do. And I just want to see that again. I want to see, this sounds weird because it's not sexy. I want to see him hit a check down or two to let me know, hey, that promise that I believe is there. Yeah, I just want to see it. I want to see the evidence that a guy like Eli Cummins is going to contribute out of the short passing game as well. So I guess that's it. I want Jack Lane to remind me of the excitement I saw against Idaho State. Because hey, we know there's some talent in the running back room, and we know that there's some. Look, Jordan Dwyer is the big name in the wide receiver room. He's clearly the number one receiver on the team. So look, we know he's going to get touches. I'm not really worried about seeing Jordan Dwyer get touches. I know he's good. I know that's going to happen during the season. It's more as again seeing the ball get spread out a little bit more in a different way, and just reminding all Vandals who are not the website, reminding all Vandals who are stoked about what you saw out of Jack Lane, those two starts. That wasn't just opportunistic. That's who the guy is. I believe that's who he is. I want him to prove it to everyone else. So now defense. The
other thing I do want to add, just one more thing now that Bryan kind of brought it up. The other thing I want to see is who makes plays after Jake Cox and Alex Moore. Because I'll be honest, they had in the practice I've been to, Jake and Alex have not been practicing. The one that I know everybody wants to see make plays hasn't impressed me that much. I know Patty would probably say something pretty similar to what I'm saying. I know, and that's just.
I need you to. Hey, sorry. Use names. Use names.
Sorry. Yeah, words are. It's other texts I'm getting right now are distracting me. I'll be honest. Chance Bogan hasn't made a lot of plays. I know he's kind of the flashy name that everybody's kind of goo-goo-gawing over after being this 3-star guy. I'm not going to go into that rant, but I just want to see other people step up because they're with those two out, with Moore and Jake Cox out.
Good correction.
There's no depth there at this team. There's no depth that I think. There's nothing to show me that they're ready yet, and I hope some people like a Mason Minnie can be able to step up and take on that number 3 spot.
Okay, I'll take that. That's your offensive takeaway. I guess here's the other one. I know they're not going to be there, but this show, we have to get an answer on how we're going to do this, because on the one end, the 2 tight end team of Jake Cox and Alex Moore, if we go last names, the one that Dallas and Tudiv we went to, Moore Cox. Well, that kind of works with the whole #OnlyTubs Discord thing, but I don't know if our target audience is really listening to the show for more Cox.
Well, there's probably a certain video website that'll be throw a temper tantrum over that.
Yeah, or do we go with Cox more? I feel like both have their merits. I just want them both to see the field so that this show continues to have to figure out how are we going to say both of their names without laughing like we're in 5th grade. Jesus Christ. There's no way around that one, but I had to address the elephant in the room. Kevin Marshall from FCS Nation Radio brought up last episode. Every time Dallas would say Moore Cox, talking about Alex Moore and Jake Cox, That's just going to be a meme. And you know what? I'm here for it. I'm leaning into it. Tubbs of the Club doesn't really run from many fights. And this isn't a fight. We're all on board for hashtag Moorcox. So defensively, Patty, what are you hoping to see in the spring game?
I mean, I think I'm really just curious who gets the most the reps with the ones at linebacker, just because it's been such a rotation. I would think that, the spring game is going to be more of an accurate portrayal of who we're going to see next fall. But I think the linebackers, I mean, I'm always interested in linebackers just because that's one of the positions I played in high school. But I think it's a really important position to the defense, like we kind of hit on earlier. And so I'm excited to see how the linebackers play in how, seeing these linebackers pair up and match up against a guy like Jack Lane, who loves his checkdowns, who loves his little short routes. That really challenges your linebackers. So it'll be interesting. I think it's going to be a fun matchup, I guess, to see who kind of wins that chess match. Your linebackers kind of trying to keep up with all the checkdowns that you're getting when they maybe should be taking away a slightly deeper route, or is Jack Lane just going to dice up the middle of the field?
Okay, Martin, defensively, what you hoping to see?
I would say DBs dominate, but I want to see more like the DBs kind of make some plays. I know Corey Thomas and KJ Trujillo have been the big guys making Evan, like, I wouldn't say shutting down, but they've been pretty good so far in spring practice, and just want to see them continue that in the spring game.
And hey, that's been pretty steady, Patty, right? We talked about DBs early on that the transfers that Martin just alluded to were for sure taking the majority of the snaps of the ones. That's Corey Thomas transferred in from Northern Iowa. And then, why am I drawing Martin? Who's the other one? KJ Trujillo, who transferred in from North Alabama. Those two have been the top two cornerbacks. What am I hoping to see defensively? This is now going to conflict with what I'm hoping to see offensively. So I guess we're just screwed, and I'm only going to see one of these. Idaho returns a ton of experience on the defensive line. And last year, Idaho had some pieces, important D-line pieces that missed a good amount of time, like, hey, Malachi Williams missed a lot of time. Now, we saw guys emerge, but hey, Dallas Afalava with an extra time to develop. The fact that we have Jakari Larmond playing some time with the twos, that's just to say we have some talent and depth at that spot. I want to see some evidence that they're going to be able to get they're going to get the quarterback a little bit faster and a little bit more than we did last season. Now, it's a spring game. They're not sacking Jack Lane. So that might be a me issue, hoping that's what I see. But I guess I just want to see a little bit of the evidence that this group, who was good, like they were a good group last year, that sticking together and having that extra time together to develop the chemistry, develop personally, develop as a team, is going to turn into material benefit on the field. And one of those things is potentially getting the quarterback a bit more than last season. Kind of picking at nits because defense, this, like we said 1,000 times, Idaho by the end of the year is a defense first team. But hey, it's a spring game. That's what we're hoping for. So hey, everyone who joined us, thank you again. Spring game, 6:00 Friday, April 26th. See it if you see Martin, yell at him. He loves people yell at him. Other than that, I'll be watching on ESPN Plus. Support the show, patreon.com/Tubbs at the Club. Support the show. Get our hashtag just the tips as well. Jason Mayer in the comment section. I would also like to see our kickers kick field goals from 50 yards out. Yeah, I'll take that. I'll take that spring game. And hey, we're gonna have new names to learn in the kicking game because that's a completely new room as well. Well, not completely, but mostly new room as well. But hey, guys, we're finishing a little bit early. The general schedule we're looking at between now and our break time is there will be next week. We're going to give reaction to the spring game. At some point, there will be volleyball news, which we will react to as well. We have some women's basketball signees to get to. We've got some men's basketball signees to get to. And to close out the year, We always do our we started tradition last year, so I say always. It's happened once, but our new tradition to close out the year before we get to our break is our questions episode, which is just not the format the show usually is. When we have the questions episode, obviously we throw it to patrons first and foremost, and those are the guys who for sure get their questions asked. But hey, we'll solicit for questions later. But that's the basic run we have between now and taking our big June-July break. With that said, man, just enjoy. Last thing, I got to bring this up. Sorry for telling everyone we're going to leave and then making Martin and Patty just listen to me. Jesus Christ, you guys exactly, and you guys did show up. That's your bad. So this is just a takeaway I'm excited to have for the spring game. At the top of the show, we talked about the stories that won't die. They will. We know that eventually they'll get resolved. And that's been a point of frustration for people about the fact of the stories existing and other, hey, some people we saw in the comments section a teeny bit today. We've seen it before. There are listeners who get anxious and uneasy when we talk about not exciting stuff in Vandal World. Well, hey, that's not going to, that fact, if shitty stories happen, we're still going to cover it. We cover what happened. That's it. But the spring game itself, that's a time for me to just sit back, forget all those things, enjoy the game, because by the time we get to the season, the annoying stories right now should be resolved and it just gets to be football time. So that's really what I'm going to do in the spring game. Thank you everyone for watching. It's time for us to sign off. Martin, you know how to take care of this. Go Vandals.
Go Vandals.